Every so often on Slope's Game Room, I like to cover a franchise that's a bit more obscure than the usual Double Dragon, Shinobi, Streets of Rage and Splatterhouse. And hey, why not? It's my channel, and what sort of nostalgia grabbing content creator would I be without talking about the franchises from my youth, popular or not? I've done it before and I'll do it again, which is why to start off 2017 I've decided to talk about the Bounder franchise. An addictive little series of games that, in all honesty, I didn't even realise was a franchise, as I only owned the first game in the series myself back in the day on my Amstrad CPC 464. I'm sure it's the same with all you guys. No matter what new game you got for whatever system you had at the time, there was always a couple of games that you couldn't stop going back to and loading up again and again. For me, Bounder was one of those games that I always seemed to want to go back to, and crazily enough, I didn't even own an original copy. Whenever my mum would come back from one of her friends' houses, her husband would actually copy the odd game for me from time to time on a blank cassette, and I would unknowingly load up whatever the game may be on it. Bounder was one of those games. And in actual fact, it was probably the only time in my Amstrad days that I remember seeing the official cassette in a pile of games at a boot fair one day, and instead of buying something new, I bought the official game for no other reason than just to simply own it. Yep, I was a big fan of Bounder. So, join me as we look into this often forgotten franchise that you guys should definitely know about, to discover who made the game, the inspiration and the sequels, as we take an in-depth look into the Bounder franchise. Welcome to Slope's Game Room. Ah yes, Bounder. The story of a bouncing tennis ball. That's you. Not much else really needs to be said here, really. What is it with home computer mascots? They don't exactly grab you, do they? Well, they didn't really need to, because this logo surely would have. Gremlin. Extremely long-time viewers of the show will know I'm a fairly big fan of the classic games of Gremlin, as they've appeared back in my second ever episode where I look at both Zool and Jack the Nipper. Another couple of awesome mascots for the company. But come on, surely it's been long enough now. I think it's time that we look at this guy. Don't worry, you guys will get your own spotlight soon enough as well. Bounder. But before we look into the game, I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. So, let's go back to the beginning. Ah, a lovely summer's day, evidenced by the red phone box and Robinson squash. It was here somewhere up north, I imagine, that Chris Shrigley, Andrew Green and Robert Toone were out playing tennis in the park. If you didn't know, these guys were already fairly known in the video game industry and released a few games up to this point individually. And now they wanted to team up to work on a game together. Under a tree in the park after their tennis game, the trio began to discuss the sort of game that they wanted to make. Their favourite game at the time was Capcom's XZ XS. And Chris had been working on getting that same parallax scrolling technique to work on a Commodore 64. And surprisingly, he actually managed to suss it out. But how would they use this new idea? Chris suggested merging Marble Madness with the top-down shooter style, and after much discussion and the fact that they was literally just playing tennis, the three decided to end on the idea of a bouncing tennis ball with platforms to bounce around on and projectiles to dodge. And this is pretty much exactly how the game ended up. Now the arcade influences are clear, but what you actually end up getting is something pretty damn original. Sure, you got your parallax constant scrolling screen, or scrolly vision as the three called it, but the sort of top-down view and what has essentially become a platform game had not been seen up to this point. Now I think it's important firstly to see if after 30 years, does the game still hold up? Yes. I'm not going to lie, the controls are slightly outdated and the hit detection is probably too unforgiving, but get used to it and you got yourself something quite special here. The sheer amount of polish to this game is just outstanding for an early home computer release, and this is due to the team having to actually make the game completely from scratch in machine code using a program called Zoom Monitor. The code got a bit unmanageable towards the end, which made it difficult to find some of the more obscure crash bugs we had. It was a crazy primitive way to write a big game like Bounder, but those were the tools we had. Now, Rob was actually a big cartoon fan as well as a gamer, and the awesome look that Bounder eventually got was actually down to him. The design of Bounder, the enemies, the hidden messages throughout the game, and even when the ball would fall off the ledge resulting in a smoke ring appearing, that was all down to him. Like a lot of games back in the day, the levels were originally drawn by hand on square paper, and everything else was just made up as the team went along. Yeah, let's chuck a bad guy here or a sandpit there. This was fairly common during the game's development, and in my opinion it actually added to the game's charm. However, it may have also added to the game's difficulty. My god, this game is hard.
I want lives, not jumps. Is this a life? You total wanker. Serious?
I'm glad you agree, Kim. In fact, whilst I was playing the game as well, I cannot understand how I ever managed to beat it as a youngster. The last few levels are mean beyond belief. But hey, if you want a challenge for your home computer version of your choice, then you're going to struggle to find a game that has held up quite as well as this one. Some of Bounder's levels are ridiculously difficult, particularly the last one, which I think Rob designed to be impossible. Thankfully, one last minute decision was to add a sort of bonus round at the end of every single stage, where you need to jump on as many question marks as possible in as few jumps as possible. This gets you plenty of points, which results in plenty of lives if done well enough. Surprisingly, it was actually going to originally be a boss at the end of every stage rather than this jumping minigame. But hey ho, in the long run, this definitely works better. So with the game complete, the guys sent it to just one studio, Gremlin Graphics. Only 2 weeks later, the three got asked to visit Gremlin in Sheffield, and not only did they want to publish the game, they also got offered full-time jobs to work in-house for the company, which they accepted. And it didn't stop there. Brilliant reviews came in from publications at the time such as Your Sinclair magazine and Zap, where it got the very much desired Gold Medal Award. Everything just seemed to fall into place for Bounder, and the guys who made it ended up achieving the dream of working in the game industry and, of course, releasing a popular, respected game. In fact, since then, the three would end up on such great games as Rock and Roll Racing, Gargoyles, Fantasy World Dizzy, Need for Speed 3, Hot Pursuit, Crackout, and Wonder Dog. But it was always Bounder that they looked back on as their baby, the game in which they had full creative freedom. So, what was next for Bounder? Rebounder. If you didn't like Bounder, you're probably not going to like this one either. I personally prefer the original, but hey, this is a good game too. In Rebounder, Bounder finds himself in the Overlord's fortress, which is heavily defended by all sorts of aliens, bubbling lava pits, slime jelly, and other horrible hazards. The main idea is the same, but one of the big changes is that you now do in fact go up against bosses at the end of levels. How do you defeat them? By shooting them. This gives the game a whole new style, sort of like a top-down shooter, but a very different one, as you'll be spending most of your time checking the ground for where you're going to be landing. Once defeated the boss, you get the chance to choose which way you want Bounder to explore the castle, giving the player plenty of replayability. As you may have guessed, Bounder's second outing came with pretty much equal reviews all round. However, it was sadly the last time that we ever got to see the hollow rubber mascot for 25 years. Almost out of nowhere, Gremlin came back with Gremlin Presents, a mobile phone game maker, and Bounder's World was going to be the company's first game. Okay, so here it is, a 69p game that is played entirely by tilt controls. Thankfully the controls feel pretty much perfect. Sure, I would have much preferred actual buttons, but hey, it works fine. This time Bounder needs to grab as many collectibles as possible to try and get a 3-star rating on all 144 levels the game provides. In review, the game is fine, I suppose. From what I can see, it has no in-game purchases, but sadly it's slotted in between a million other similar mobile phone games and really is sort of just a bit average, which is probably why the game's only got 2 reviews behind it on the Android store. And it's obvious the game didn't do too well, especially when you look at Gremlin Presents' Facebook page that became unused not long after the game was released. What a way to go for Bounder. All in all, the games actually all play perfectly fine. Yeah, that last one was a tad forgettable, but those original 2 really did help Bounder stand proud and tall next to Gremlin's most iconic mascots of the time. If you was a home computer player back in the mid-80s in Europe, then it's very unlikely that you didn't have or at least know of this classic character. Not bad going, Bounder. Not bad. Hey there guys, many thanks for checking out the video. I hope you all enjoyed it. A big shout out goes out to all of my Patreons, with a special shout out going to Ryan Burford, Ian A. Chapman, Phil Lowlins, Taylor Almond and Ted Kimmel. If you want to be part of the end screen shoutouts, then please do check out my Patreon. And if you're not subscribed to Slopes Game Room, and well, you know what to do. Don't forget the notification bell. But for now, that is it from me. This is DJ Slopes signing out, and hopefully I'll see you all next time.